All right, Kevin back with you for another episode of the $1 Million Relationships Podcast. And today I'm here with Steve Reiter. Steve, welcome. So awesome to have you on the show.
It's actually Reiter.
Reiter, my bad. You know what? I guess I should have asked that. That's okay. That's
It's all
okay.
good. It's all good.
Well, I am really excited to be having this conversation today, Steve. And I want
Thanks,
to
Kevin.
start by
Sure.
giving a shout out to Sam because Sam Vandervalk is the one who connected us. And whenever you get connected through somebody that you've already got this great relationship with. It's like when you
Right.
you and I got to talk for the first time, it was like we'd already known each other for years. And then now, as we've been
Yeah.
having conversations, when we had our initial conversation, even now before we hit the record button, we found out, man, we got a bunch of mutual friends in common and stuff. And this is really cool. And it speaks volumes to the power of relationships, which of course is what this podcast is all about. And
Yeah.
so I want to just kind of start. I want to turn it over to you, Steve, so we can set some context. I want to really give the listeners a good picture of, let them know who you are and what you're all about. So I want you to be able to share about what you do, who
Yeah.
you serve, what inspires you most about the work you do and the impact you're making, and even give us some of the backstory as well.
Yeah. So I grew up in southern Wisconsin,
Okay.
just north of Madison. And I'm one that is fortunate in that it took me a bit in college to kind of figure this out. But once I figured it out, I love audio and media and production and strategy and that kind of stuff. When I was in fourth grade, my uncle bought my brothers and I a Fisher Price cassette recorder, and I used to make radio shows in the backyard with my friends.
That's
In
awesome.
fact, in fact, I had a friend who I'm just a couple weeks older than him, and his aunt used to babysit the two of us when we were infants.
Okay.
I was at his sign shop in downtown Chicago, Phil Schultz, and I was staying with he and his wife and kids for a couple nights. And I was working in his shop with him, working on my audio editing while he was working on the graphic design. And he was like, Steve, I think it's funny that you work in radio and audio production. Do you remember when we were kids and we used to be in your backyard making radio shows? In sixth grade, I hosted a kids news segment at a local radio station.
Uh-huh.
And then when I was a senior in high school, I was making a radio spot for the morning announcements for a class. And a classmate who I knew since the first grade, she looked at me and Patricia was like, Steve, I've never seen you smile like this before. And it was a transition in college where I remembered those three things. And I was like, yeah, radio, audio production, music production. I think that'd be super fun.
Mhm.
And sure enough, I changed and got an entry level job at a little nonprofit here in Colorado Springs that at our peak we were reaching about 100 million people a day worldwide with our various radio shows.
Uh-huh.
And in fact, in 2012 we were inducted into the Radio Hall of Fame. We beat out Dr. Laura, we beat out Bob Costas, and we beat out the king of radio, Howard Stern, in
Wow.
2012.
Wow.
And then I left with the founder to go help start what became our marketing company said was the largest rollout in radio history. And yeah, I left in 2012, burned out, took some time away.
Uh-huh.
But once that love for media started to reawaken, that's when I really started to put some effort into my company, Right Turn Media, where I've got 10 editors and two producers, and we produce podcasts, radio, audiobooks, and the video associated with those projects.
Yeah.
We're
Yeah.
starting to do some other video as well, like some YouTube video, some social media video. In fact, I have a client right now. We're in the process of going through her website. She has 12 different tiles for different services that she offers, and we've kind of consolidated some of them. And I interviewed her, and then threw those interviews into ChatGPT, and we have a 2 3 minute script now for her to read that we've kind of that she's taken, and both tweaking. And then we're going to do some video to kind of help really capture people's eyes and attention to learn a little bit more than that little tile on the website's able to tell. And so
Mhm.
those kinds of things are super fun to me. I mean,
Yeah.
just creatively coming up with new ideas for someone media wise,
Yeah.
being able to tell story because it's stories that connect us as human beings.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. So, what is one of the most just exciting and rewarding and fulfilling projects that I mean, you probably got a lot of them, but when I ask that question, what comes top of mind for you, Steve?
I think there's two.
Okay.
Um, One is in 2018 or 2019, I forget which it was. It all kind of blurs together. I was having cigars in a backyard with a dear friend of mine, a mentor, and then two other friends and mentors. And we're a part of this cigar club called Holy Smokes.
Okay.
Holy Smokes is a worldwide now group of over 5,500 men and women around the world in this secret Facebook group.
Okay.
And at the time, we were probably at about 4,000 people in the group. And we're like, how do we get the message out of faith, friendship, find tobacco, and drink? And how lives are transformed and how friendships are deepened. And because the group is secret, we have members in there that are in rather big denominations that are not tobacco or alcohol friendly.
Okay.
They look at a cigar as a sin. They look at a beer or a glass of bourbon as a sin. And so on the down low, they need to be kind of secret. But what's something that we can do? And we created a podcast called the Holy Smokes Club Podcast. And in it, we feature member stories. And Kevin, I can't tell you the number of people that I have interviewed through that show that
Wow.
all of us, that me sitting down and soliciting their story has deepened friendships.
Yeah.
Acquaintances have become very dear friends because of that process. And I'm sure you've seen that as well through this journey in this show. And so,
Absolutely.
Holy Smokes is something that's been very near and dear to my heart. And I tell people the best human beings I've ever met in the world are Holy Smokers. Period. They are.
I
And
love
and
that.
and, and part of it is because I mean, there's only four rules to be a member. No
Okay.
assholes. So
That's a good rule.
it weeds out the super religious folk that are assholes. Two, what happens to Holy Smokes stays a Holy Smokes. So conversations, no pictures shared outside the group unless you have express permission from everyone in that picture.
Mhm.
Uh, no selling. So you're not going there to hand out business cards and invite people to your Amway. You're not pitching. You're not inviting people over and all of a sudden you're pitching Amway.
Mhm.
And and last one, you leave room for the Holy Spirit to work. That's it. You just leave room
Wow.
for God to work. That's it. Those are the four rules. And the kind of culture that Kei Hiramine, who is the founder of Holy Smokes, has established. We have chapters all around. I mean, up in your area in Seattle, Rob Smith is in Everett, not too far from you.
Yeah.
He regularly has people over at his boat factory. And then down in Issaquah, we got Buzz Leonard and Jim Canfield. They're helping to lead that group in southeastern Seattle. And it's just, yeah, it's really, really, it's something I'm really passionate about and something I absolutely love doing.
Wow. Well, there's definitely no hiding that, Steve. That is awesome. And like how awesome is and you know what you said about just having conversations, we launched the $1 Million Relationships podcast 3 years ago. At this point, we've almost I think we just released episode 293 or 294. So we almost have done 300 episodes. And what you say is totally true. I love talking with entrepreneurs. I love hearing their stories. I love hearing their backstory of how they got into doing what they do, all of that stuff. And you're right, that's what really connects us with each other is hearing our stories. And through that, we get to really know each other. And from that place, What I've found is when you get entrepreneurs who just make a meaningful connection, a real relationship, doing business from there is really easy if we want to do it. It's so doggone easy because there's already that trust in character and competence. And then when you got that, and then also got alignment of values and interests, well, man, that's a match made in heaven right there. And some stuff's gonna happen. And
Yeah.
so I love it. I love it. And well, okay, so now that we've got a little bit of context set here, I want to
Okay.
switch gears just a little bit, and I'm going to reiterate the question around relationships for the benefit of our listeners. So, Steve, have you ever been introduced to a person or persons who completely changed the course of your life or your business in such a powerful way that much of what you have today would not be possible if not for this person or persons? And I'm just really excited to hear your story and your experience around this topic of relationships.
Yeah. Oh geez. I mean, the way that you phrased it, when you asked that question a little different way when we talked earlier this week in the pre-interview, I was like, oh, these two names. And then the way you just described it, my God, there's so many people now that I could think of. But I'm gonna stick with the two um that come to mind the most. One is Kei Hiramine, the
Okay.
founder of Holy Smokes.
Okay.
Kay is someone that I met through the person number two that I'm going to mention. And immediately, the first question he asked me was, "You like an occasional cigar?"
Mhm.
Yeah, I love an occasional cigar. I just don't have anyone to smoke with. Well, I can help you out there, is what Kay said. And so he introduced me, got me into the group, the secret Facebook group. And I can't tell you the number of doors that has opened.
Wow.
I
Wow.
mean, there's a guy named Mitch Smith who's in the group. I was in Charleston for a mastermind meeting. Mitch and I, we hit it off. I mean, we hit it off pre 2020, and then we became even closer after 2020 and everything that I went through.
Okay.
Um, Mitch, I was sitting in his back porch and watching college football and just hanging out with him over a cigar. And he was like, Steve, do you think you would have any interest in connecting with Dr. Denis Cortese? I was like, no, tell me about him. He's like, all right, Dr. Cortese spent 40 plus years at Mayo Clinic and he finished as the president and CEO of the whole damn thing. Now, why is this connection important? Well, rewind to 2020. My wife went into the hospital April 29th, 2020, long health history of autoimmune issues and pulmonary hypertension, being diagnosed in 2014. She gets hospitalized, 21 days in the hospital. I'm never allowed in until she's dead.
Wow.
You
Wow.
went through something similar in that your wife
Yeah.
had a minor stroke, hospitalized. Fortunately, she came home.
Yeah.
No visitation allowed whatsoever.
That's right. That's
And
right.
so I've taken this, what happened, because I never want to go through that kind of pain. And I never want anyone that I love to ever go through that kind of pain. I created a nonprofit called the Never Alone Project. And that's really the other passion that I have going on besides my business,
Yep.
Holy Smokes, Never Alone Project.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I created the nonprofit ultimately for the goal of seeing enshrined in federal law patients' visitation rights so that everyone, no matter what's going on, has access to at least one screened loved one per day, no time limits, no matter what's going on.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, because we know study after study shows having a loved one there aids in the healing process, and conversely, loneliness and isolation increase mortality. There are so many studies. Loneliness and isolation increase mortality, decrease health outcomes.
Yeah.
And so when Mitch told me Dr. Denis Cortese, I was like, yeah, because there's no bigger name other than another former president and CEO or current president and CEO of Mayo Clinic that's as big. I mean, when I think of the premier, the absolute top number one top dog in the medical space, it's the Mayo Clinic.
Mhm.
I mean, yeah, you got Cleveland Clinic, yeah, you got Johns Hopkins, Cedar Sinai. Those are those are number two, three, four, five, etc. Mayo Clinic is number one in the world,
Yeah.
period.
Yeah.
And sure enough, Dr. Cortese replied back and we had a Zoom call. And then
Wow.
while I was in Arizona for a conference, we got together for a lunch and he is just the most warm, giving, incredible, humble,
Yeah.
unassuming. And he drove up in a white Honda. Here's a guy who was president, CEO, doctor, and he drove up in this white Honda. And I was like, this is a guy I really, really like. And that's the kind of thing that Holy Smokes has, Kay, through Holy Smokes, has really opened up in my life is just this massive network. And he's actually getting ready he's in the process of writing a book that he's calling Net Weaver,
Okay.
not networker, net weaver,
Mhm.
weaving relationships together. And Kay's an incredible human being who I'm going to introduce to you to have him on because, especially once the book is out, because Kay's the man.
Yeah. Wow. He sounds incredible. Sounds incredible.
Yeah, I was just in. He unfortunately left Colorado, moved to now he's now in the Franklin, Tennessee area.
Yeah.
He actually I think it was 2021, got hospitalized with COVID, almost died, also alone. And he talked
Wow.
about how he wishes, his daughters could have been there with him and
Mhm.
because he wasn't sure he was going to make it home. And in fact, he almost got intubated with a ventilator. And
Wow.
it was a total spiritual thing where he felt like God came to him and met him. And the doctor the next morning was like, "What was happening at 2 in the morning? What was going on?" Because I was just getting ready and I just happened to check your numbers and all of a sudden you made a nice turn for the better. I was like, well, I had this spiritual experience where God came and touched me, and so
Wow.
Kay's
Wow.
just Kay's the man. Kay is the
Yeah.
man. And then the other one is the friend that introduced me to Kay, John
Okay.
Ramstead. John Ramstead. And John's got a crazy story. Got ordered. He was a Navy fighter pilot. Got orders to go to Top Gun, and a softball injury derailed that career. Got into, became an entrepreneur, became a really successful financial advisor, and it was actually at a Family Talk donor event in Great Falls, Montana. The second day of the event, he was on his horse, and I saw him go with the horse. Went and the horse and John went into a steel corral fence, fractured or spider fractured in a full gallop, by the way.
Wow.
Fractured or spider fractured every bone in his skull except his right orbital bone in his jaw. Fractured C2, C3, uh, broke his left clavicle, scapula, ribs, collapsed lung. It's an accident he shouldn't have survived from.
Wow.
But it's a crazy God story of how he's 23 surgeries, I think is what he had,
Wow.
and massive brain trauma. But he's now working. He's back to have being nearly fully healed from that massive brain trauma. And in I met him the night before, and there was something about him where I was like, this is a dude I need to get to know. And because he lived in the Denver area, as while he was in the hospital, I made some occasional trips, regular trips up there to go hang out with him and get to know him more. And when I left radio, when I burned out, I dipped my toes into financial advising, and he kind of mentored me through that journey. And he's also someone who's super connected and has been very generous with his network. And yeah, he's become in fact, we had about an hour conversation this morning. And when my wife died, John was the one that I called to meet me at the hospital to make sure I was okay to drive back home after saying goodbye to my wife's body. And so, yeah, John and Kay are the two people that immediately I can think of the most that uh, they have changed, or if not changed, significantly enhanced the direction of my life.
Hmm. Mhm. Wow. That's phenomenal. That is phenomenal. And I mean, what a testament right there to the power of relationships, right relationships. So I want to dig a little bit deeper on this, Steve. So I want to have you think about a time where you personally you got to make a really substantial impact, and maybe even in the moment you were kind of like, wow, look at that. Maybe even it surprised you a little bit. And yet you also know that that hands down would have never happened if not for your relationship with either one of these gentlemen. What's an example of something like that, Steve?
Oh, I can't tell you the number of times that I've brought people into Holy Smokes and they've just talked about how it's absolutely changed their lives. One of the beautiful things about doing that Holy Smokes Club podcast is it was indeed that it was a public facing window into Holy Smokes, and guys mainly, but even some women
Mhm.
would search on the internet for Christian cigars, and boom, we'd be the first one up there or one of the first. And they'd come in and they'd plug in and they'd listen to the podcast, and they'd go to Seattle or they'd go to Southern California or come to Colorado or go to Tampa or Orlando or Houston or Dallas Fort Worth or New York City or Ohio Valley or wherever. And they'd start to just get plugged in
Yeah.
and they start to develop relationships. And then we start to hear, oh, my marriage is so much better. Oh, I've when I'm traveling for work, I'm getting together with holy smokers in that city because it's better than going to a bar, because it's better than going and watching porn in my room or whatever it is that wasn't as healthy as developing relationships.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
so, yeah, that's the first thing I think of is just the power of just being out there and then introducing people into this community and what we can do to really just deepen, like I say in the open, a, a show about faith, friendship, find tobacco, and drink.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to deepen faith. We're trying to deepen friendships
Yeah.
and create lasting friendships and life-changing friendships because that group has been not only was it good for me when Elizabeth went into the hospital I got introduced in August of 2014,
Okay.
and it was 2 months afterwards, 2 or 3 months afterwards, Elizabeth got hospitalized for 3 weeks when she was diagnosed with pulmonary hypertension.
Okay.
The group was so generous to me in that, even way more so after Elizabeth died. I
Mhm.
mean, it was something where she died on a Tuesday and it was on Saturday. I had a bunch of holy smokers over, and remember John came down, Kay came over and John came down from Denver, and John brought his Tesla Model 3, and Matthew, my son, my oldest son, had just gotten his driver's permit. So John took him out in the Tesla out for a
Wow.
drive on the Eastern Plains, and Matthew came home with the biggest smile. This is a kid that his mom just died Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, 4 days earlier.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he had the biggest smile. And it was like, okay, all right, life can get back to normal. This is this pain that I feel isn't going to be forever. We are going to be able to, have fun and live and honor her. And so, yeah, the group has been absolutely incredible. And I love how I'm able to share that with others and bring people into it.
Yeah. And to think it all started by somebody asking you one simple question.
And not only that, though, but it all started even before I met Kay and he asked me that question. It was Kay that just sent out a text to a half dozen big nonprofit ministry leaders here in Colorado Springs, as well as the two biggest the pastors the two biggest churches in town. And he said, "Hey, I'm around. I'm available. Anyone want to come over to the backyard around the fire pit and have a cigar?" Every single one of them showed. And every single one of them, these hard charging executives, they at the end of the night, they're like, "I need more of this. I need more of this.
Yeah.
I need more of this." And it
Yeah.
just kind of grew from there to this
Yeah.
thing now where, I mean, it's over 5,500 members around the world with all of these chapters. And
Wow.
even in like a small town in Kansas where this pastor, Caleb, he, it's a town of like 200 people,
Yeah.
but he has a bunch of guys from around the town in his backyard talking about faith, talking about life over cigars and bourbon.
Wow.
And he said he's just seen massive transformation in that tiny little town in Kansas.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he was one that found just through the podcast.
Yep.
Nobody invited him. He didn't have someone to invite him in. He just happened to look for cigars and Christian. And while he was finishing seminary in Pittsburgh, and
Mm.
yeah, I love it.
Wow.
I love connecting people. I love just what this community
Yeah.
means,
Yeah.
and how I've seen it change lives.
Yeah, for sure. Well, you know what? There's no hiding your passion for this. That's for sure. You know, for anybody that's listening to this right now going, man, Kevin, I really love Steve. I love who he is. I love how he shows up, and I'd like to find out more about him. What any resources, any websites that we can share with folks?
Yeah, Media is
Okay.
my media production company. So Media. Like
Okay.
I said, podcasts, radio, audiobooks, video associated with those projects, as well as some other video stuff. I now have 4 video editors that work for me. I hire primarily for audio because I know lots of video editors that they can't edit their way audio wise out of a paper sack. Bad, bad. They cover up really bad audio edits through video, and I hear it, and it's, oh, you got to be a great audio editor first to work for me.
Okay. Okay.
The Never Alone Project, neveralonepandemic.org, neveralonepandemic.org. We also have Never Alone Project, but for some reason it's not routing the right way. And so hope I'm going to get that fixed today. But Never Alone Pandemic is definitely. And then holysmokes.club,
Love it.
holysmokes.club. And there you'll
Okay.
be able to join our Mighty Networks group. And if you're on Facebook, we can send you a link to get into the secret Facebook group where most of the action is. But on Mighty Networks, we do have a handful of chapters that are primarily on Mighty Networks,
Okay. Okay.
like
Very
Northern
good.
Colorado, which it's Loveland up kind of towards Fort Collins.
Okay.
They're the ones that one of the groups that uses our Mighty Networks group
Okay.
to
Okay.
organize. So
I've got a friend that lives in Fort Collins. You mentioned Franklin, Tennessee. I've got a friend who lives in Franklin, Tennessee. So,
Kay has done an amazing job of growing that group in Franklin because after he got out of the hospital with COVID, he was kind of bouncing around and kind of figuring out, okay, we feel like our time in Colorado Springs is coming to a close. Especially after, because of the lung damage, he had uh, the altitude. He wasn't able to really maintain
okay.
oxygen levels here at 8,000 feet
Okay.
that he is at the lower elevations. And so he kind of felt like, okay, I guess our time in Colorado Springs is coming to a close. And he happened to be in Franklin and he was meeting with all of these leaders and none of them knew each other. And he was like, this feels like something where these people just need to be getting to know each other.
Yeah.
And sure enough, I mean, when I was there in mid-February, I had 3 full days where I think it was 9 different Holy Smokes podcasts episodes recorded. And when you record, you're a little bit shorter. When I record, it's usually 90 minutes, 2 hours, maybe two and a half.
Okay.
I'm like
Okay.
Rogan, where I'm really digging into their
Yeah.
story and
Yeah.
trying to, and then I close it with rapid fire questions where those answers can go very long.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Wow.
so,
Wow.
yeah, he's really done a great job in that Franklin area of really getting a really great group of human beings connected.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
Franklin's kind of become like a place where I'm now going on a semi-regular basis to
That's
hang out with
awesome.
some really good holy smokers.
Yeah, that is awesome. Now I'm gonna have to go check out the website and stuff. And so I don't even smoke cigars, but I might have to start, you know? And so
It's here's the thing for someone who's never thought about smoking a cigar.
Mhm.
It's something that slows a man down. I mean,
Okay.
Kevin, you and I are both hard chargers. We're fast movers. We're going here and going there and doing this and doing that. But a cigar is at least usually a 60 to 120-minute slowdown where you have that in your hand and you're just puffing away every 30, 40 seconds and you're having a conversation and those conversations go deep. And I mean, men since the dawn of time gathered around fire.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
at fire at night that we hang out and we bond and we tell our stories, whether it's after hunting, whether it was after war back way back in the day, whether it was in the evening after all the kids had gone to bed, whatever,
Mhm.
around teepees, community, whatever. And that's what it is. It's men bonding around fire.
Mm.
And it's something that, and because someone may be thinking, well, what about the cancer? You're not inhaling.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're not breathing cigar smoke in like a cigarette. And
Mhm.
so often tobacco studies, everything gets kind of bunched together where cigarettes and cigars are together. But when they're separated, one FDA study, it was a long longitudinal study that looked at all these different studies. No, almost no cancer risk until you start to see a real small risk when people are smoking 3 cigars a day, so 21 a week.
Oh, okay.
I have 1 cigar or 2 cigars in a week
Uh-huh.
because I
Hmm.
don't smoke when I'm by myself. I smoke when I'm with friends.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so, at most, I'll have, 3 or 4
Okay.
in a week.
Okay. Not
And
anywhere
so,
near the 21 mark.
no, no.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I actually have a on the Holy Smokes podcast, I interviewed Dr. Abid Hussein, who's the functional medicine doctor up in Denver. And this guy's on the bleeding edge of health and he was my doctor for a while. I need to start going back to him. He just moved clinics even further away. He was up in South Denver. Now he's even further away. But I talked with Abid and I was like, what about the pros and cons? And he was like, there's very little chance of cancer increase, but those benefits of relaxing, connecting, conversation, feeling heard, feeling like you know, like you're listening to someone, connection, those kinds of things, those benefits
Yeah. Yeah.
way outweigh those
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
minimal risk of cancer for, just a handful of cigars a week.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, Steve, my goal for this podcast has always been, really clear right from the get-go. It's twofold. I want to give people like you, my guests, the opportunity to just honor a person or persons who had such a profound impact on your life and on your business. And then for our listeners who are also entrepreneurs, founders, and CEOs, we get to use these conversations to just inspire them to place an intentional focus on creating more real, meaningful, rewarding, and profitable relationships in their own lives. And with your help, Steve, today we definitely delivered on that. And so I want to thank you so much for that. For anybody that's listening to this going, man, Kev, I really like Steve. I would love to find out more about him and what he's doing. I mean, we shared the Holy Smoke stuff here and all that. Anything
Yeah.
else you want to share with him before we leave? We good?
No, rightturn.media,
Yep. Right.
neveralonepandemic.org, and holysmokes.club. Those
Perfect.
those are the three
Perfect.
places. And reach out, connect. I'm always willing to just pay it forward and just if somebody wants, hey, I'm thinking about a podcast. What do you think? All right, let's talk. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not everyone should start a podcast.
No, no,
Most people should guest on podcasts,
uh-huh.
but
Mhm.
not everyone should start a podcast. And
Yeah.
so I love kind of talking through and kind of brainstorming maybe some new creative ideas for media strategy, for those kinds of things. I'm always willing to just pay it forward and
Yeah. Yeah.
try and bless someone.
Well, I'll tell you, and I agree with what you said, that not everybody should start a podcast. For me, I will tell you, uh, hosting this podcast has been hands down the most rewarding and impactful thing I have done in my 30 years as an entrepreneur. And it impacted everything I was already doing in such a powerful way. And it has been incredibly rewarding. And even at that, I'm totally with you. That doesn't mean just because a podcast is such a great thing for me, I would never suggest, well, everybody should go do a podcast,
Yeah. Yeah.
But if you love talking with like-minded people and I would suggest too, you know, when my buddy Brad really championed it with me 3 years ago and said, Kev, you should really host a podcast. And I was like, why do you say that? Because hosting a podcast wasn't even on my radar at all. But he's like,
Yeah.
Kev, he's like, you love talking with entrepreneurs. And he's like, you would do it just because you love having conversations with
Yeah.
entrepreneurs. And he's like, and here's the thing. He's like, you won't mess it all up trying to figure out how to monetize it, but yet you totally will. It'll just happen organically. And he was totally right about that. And it has been, and like I look at today, we've almost released 300 episodes, 3 years in. It has been such an amazing experience. I am so stoked for the next 3 years and the next
Yeah.
300 episodes. I'm just honored to be along for the ride, and the kind and caliber of people that I get connected with
Yeah.
because of the podcast that I would have never got connected with if I was not hosting the podcast. It's been absolutely amazing. So I do want to plant that seed for any of you that might, if you are thinking that, like, you know what, maybe this might be an alignment for me. Reach out to Steve, have a conversation with him, just explore it and stuff, and see if because if it's speaking to you, it might be right up your alley. It might be one of them. Like
Yeah.
like for me, might be the most rewarding and impactful thing you ever do. And so, well, Steve, once again, thank you so much for taking the time to have this conversation today. Really appreciate it. Really appreciate you.
Thank you, Kevin.